One of the things that really surprised me was when I was reading about your time at The Office, which, by the way, I have to say is my favorite show of all time. Should probably say that. I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people.
Wait, are you saying right now that the U.S. office is better than the U.K. office?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I know.
Do you hear that?
It is maybe because there was more of them.
There's a hell of a lot more of them.
So I watched, honestly, when I was going through a difficult part in my life and I was building my businesses, I was shoplifting food because I was so broke at this chapter of my life. And I had this beat up laptop where I had to like solder the charger because I couldn't afford the £10 to buy a new one. It was the only thing I watched. And I watched it for about 2 years. So obviously I just kept going back and back and back. It was, you talk in chapter 10 about the 7 pillars of spiritual revolution and one of them being about spreading joy. It spread a whole lot of joy in my life, a whole lot of joy. And I don't watch TV, to be honest. I don't watch TV, movies, don't really watch any of it. These guys all know. But The Office, I watched. I don't think there's anything else that I have watched. But when I read about your experience on the show, there was a real sense of unfulfillment, especially in the early years when you were making the show. You talked about that a little bit on Bill's podcast as well. When I was in The Office, I spent several years really mostly unhappy because it wasn't enough.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you enjoyed The Office. And I just need to speak to how deeply gratified I am, and all of us are, that The Office has brought so much serenity and peace and love and upliftment and inspiration to people. I mean, getting on a TV show is one of the hardest things in the world. And then getting on one that lasts is a really hard one. And then getting on one that lasts and is good. And then one that lasts and is good and still has a cultural impact 10 years after it has ended is, I mean, talk about hitting the lottery. I mean, we had no idea. We knew we were onto something really special and funny and magical. And of course, Steve Carell is one of the great comedic actors that will ever live. But we had no idea it would have this kind of impact, and we're so deeply grateful and gratified around that. And going back to the English Office, it's always like, it's so funny to me. In The Bassoon King, the other book there, I talk a little bit about that competition is so absurd. Like the anger and vitriol that you Brits brought to the fact that Americans were going to remake the beloved Office. It was so staggering. I mean, it was so enraged and vitriolic. And it was like, guys, the English Office isn't going anywhere. You can watch it over and over again. We're not going to take all the copies and burn them. You know what I mean? We're going to take a brilliant idea by Ricky and Steven and the BBC, and God bless them. It's astonishingly brilliant. And we're going to kind of run with it. Instead of 12 episodes, we're going to make 200 episodes. How's that? If you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. But that was an interesting time frame. But yeah, so it's interesting that you bring this up, because I was very frustrated because I was on Bill Maher and I was on one other podcast, and I was talking about how there were times on The Office that I really struggled because I really wasn't happy because it wasn't enough. Here I was on the greatest job that I could ever imagine, beyond my wildest dreams, of that geeky chess-playing, bassoon-playing kid from suburban Seattle that, walked around like a pimply serial killer, that I would be part of one of the great TV shows of all time. I mean, give me a break. And here I was getting paid like millions of dollars and playing one of the most memorable characters. And I'm getting nominated for awards, and I'm working with the most beautiful family of actors and writers imaginable. And yet I was like, how come I can't get more movies? And why did my movie I did bomb? And why won't they make a deal with me? And I want to have this, and I want an office on Warner Brothers. And why can't I get And I spent a lot of time, unnecessary time and angst and anguish in that anxious discontent at a time when I should have just been like, it doesn't get better than this. Just enjoy it, drink it in, and be a part of this incredible artistic, because it was artistic, experience So, but I think the reason I've been bringing that up in some interviews is I think it's important for people to understand that, here's someone who, 15 years into their acting career or 20 years into their acting career, because I started playing Dwight when I was 38 years old, has officially made it.
Yeah.
And they're still unhappy. And that is so human. It's so quintessentially human. And to think that, if I hit this end result, then I am going to be happy. And that's why I brought it back to that unhappiness that I experienced in my 20s. Like, I was an actor. I was from suburban Seattle. Here I was. I had an apartment in New York. I was doing acting, and yet I was really unhappy and miserable. And it didn't make any sense because society had always told me, like, there's this if-then proposition. Like, if you achieve X, Y, and Z, if you make a certain amount of money, if you get a certain position, if you're in a certain kind of relationship, if you have a house at a certain level, if you're a member of a certain club or whatever, then you will be happy. Once I achieve this, then I will be happy. That's bullshit. It's absolute and total crock of bullshit. Now, certainly, I'm not meaning to demean anyone that's struggling to pay bills and they're going like, fuck you, Hollywood elitist. You got millions of dollars in the bank and you don't have to worry about, paying the bills. I was there, I was having to worry about, paying the bills, and it was a struggle for the, first 15 years of my career. So I've been there. I know what that's like, and I honor that. So you certainly want to make enough money it does take an incredible pressure off your shoulders once you have achieved that. But to think that then you're going to be happy, I mean, you've interviewed a lot of millionaires and a lot of successful people. Like, how many of them are really fulfilled, deeply fulfilled and happy?
What would I have had to have done to have gotten Rainn at the height and the peak of that success, even when it was going, to be in the moment and to enjoy it for what it was? Because it's not just you, it's all the people that are listening now that are in jobs. They've just got that promotion and now they're thinking about becoming a director or a CEO, that they too are deferring the happiness off to the future behind some goal. What can we do in the moment to just like enjoy life today, bring our happiness into the now? If you always think your happiness is somewhere in the future, it always will be. What would I have had to have said to you to get you to snap out of that?
That's a great question. I don't know that there's anything that you could have said to me in a couple of sentences or a couple of paragraphs, but I think if you could have encouraged me to go back onto my spiritual journey, back into my spiritual journey, because you're absolutely right. All we have is now. All we have is this next breath, is this breath that we're currently experiencing. And this is where the joy is. And if we're waiting for the joy to be 375 breaths from now, or 3,000 breaths from now, or 300 breaths from now, we're missing out 100%. And I think gratitude has a great deal, because one of the cures for chronic dissatisfaction, the cure for dukkha, is gratitude. And I would have been to Rainn, one of the things that would have been really helpful is like, Rainn, you need to start every day with 10 things you're grateful for. It's like, I'm grateful for Jenna Fisher and John Krasinski and Steve Carell, and I'm grateful for a nice paycheck and a healthy son and a beautiful wife, and I'm grateful for, the fans of The Office and the fact that I get to, I've trained as an actor my whole life, and I get to use those skills and tell wonderful stories and make people laugh. Like, if I could have stayed hooked into that, and I did get hooked back into that. I'm describing a period of like 3 to 4 years where I was really struggling with that. And then I came around.
Does it rob you of your ambition though? This is a question I always used to mull with myself, because that Rainn that wanted more versus the Rainn that goes, I'm grateful for what I have. Is one more or less ambitious than the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that, because there is, did my chronic dissatisfaction fueled my spiritual drive and also fueled my career drive and my ambition, because I was so chronically disenchanted and disaffected that I wanted more. I wanted more opportunities. I wanted more money. I wanted more knowledge. I wanted more wisdom. There's a drive there that can be healthy and a drive there's an unhealthy aspect to it. So I don't really know the answer to that. I think for now, when I look in my life, like I still have great ambition. Like I still want Soul Boom as a brand. I'm just kind of starting to think about like how to expand that as a brand. I still want to act in movies. I want to direct. I want to maybe create companies. I created Soul Pancake, maybe create another company or something like that. And there's a lot I want to do. But I'm hoping to bring the best aspects of myself toward that ambition. And for me, that has to do with service and God and utilizing myself, my God-given talents and faculties, and maximizing those and living in God's will. I'm sorry to get all hippy-dippy religious now, but to me, that's what's driving me now. But it's as long as we're in the battle of the ego, and that's the most ancient, right, human spiritual struggle, is the battle of the ego. And psychologists talk about it, and prophets talk about it, and gurus talk about it, right? So as long as we want to promote the self and the self-will and ego satisfaction, we'll never be happy.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.